What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another match preview stream as Spurs face Fulham at Craven Cottage to right those wrongs of the Carabao Cup. Second round it was earlier on this season when we did crash out on penalties. We have further then since beaten them in the league not as long after that. But yeah, we need to right those wrongs of Craven Cottage, don't we?
I think it's more important just to make sure we're consolidating that top 4 place, and even cutting the gap to the top 3 to 8 points would be fairly significant going into the international break. And obviously we want to put even more pressure on Aston Villa, who play Sunday away at West Ham. If we can win on Saturday night, we'll obviously go above them, with them going into that game having to win away at West Ham. So that's going to be really, really crucial. But look, we face a Fulham team who recently are in good form, especially at home. They've been turning some teams over. So it's not going to be an easy game, but for me, that's the most crucial thing here, carrying on that momentum we built at Villa Park and making sure we're consolidating our position in the race for top 4.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And we're going to do it a bit differently this week. We're going to go into the predicted lineup first, and then we're going to go into the match review. So in terms of Ange, he's been talking about his injuries and stuff like that going into this game. So what have we got?
It's some mixed news from Ange. He revealed Mickey van der Ven is definitely going to be missing this weekend, but he said that the hamstring injury is definitely nowhere near as significant as the one he picked up against Chelsea back in November, and they think, he said, that the international break is actually coming at a good time for him because it means he probably won't miss too many games. They hope to have him back after the international break. So that's positive in a sense that he's not missing for too long, but obviously negative that he is going to be missing this weekend. More positive news though, Richarlison has trained this week and is set to be available for the game this weekend if he comes through training today. So that's really good to have him back and available. But more negative news coming about Manor Solomon. Apparently he's been making no progress, and he says that the medical team are now going to have to use, quote, other strategies to try and get him back fit as he's still feeling discomfort. So really disappointing news there on Manor Solomon. But obviously the other long-term absentees, Sessegnon and Fraser Forster, remain injured. But yeah, really, really concerning about Solomon, considering, we haven't seen him since October time. He's had a few setbacks now, and it seems as though they're at the end, like they're running out of ideas in terms of getting him back fit at this point, which is really, really worrying to hear.
It's very frustrating to hear that kind of news, because it was only like a month ago they were saying that he was close to returning. They were saying he was, going to be in the squad, some rumours were saying, and now it just seemed like there's no return date whatsoever. Ange just seemed a bit like downbeat about the whole situation, and I don't know where we're going to turn with this one. I really hope it does take a turn for the better at some point soon, but there's just no kind of answers for it at the moment, which is really frustrating.
And it's interesting where it leaves us. Let's say if he is out for the rest of the season, not to say that he is, but if we don't see him again for the rest of the season, how we play that going into next season. Do we consider him as one of our options for wingers, or do we move forward and sign wingers in with the view of really not considering Solomon as an option? And if he does become an option, it's just a bonus. It's a worrying situation there.
Very worrying situation. But I guess the caveat to that is that we did only get him for free, so it's not like it's wasted money. Obviously, it is wasted on wages, but it is not like that he took transfer budget away from another player that we're going to sign. So look, I don't think that's a positive to look at, just because it's a space in the squad that needs filling. But if he can't get fit from now to the end of the season, and he goes into pre-season still with that injury as well, then I think you have to plan without him.
Yeah, which is really would be really disappointing from his point of view after getting such a big move last summer.
Yeah, but look, let's get into the predicted lineup. Obviously, a 4-3-3 formation as per usual. Goal is going to be a Vicario.
Yeah, no surprises there. Obviously, he's been brilliant this season. I remember in the Fulham game back in when we beat them 2-0 earlier in the season, I remember at 0-0, he made some real crucial saves. I remember one specifically from a Paulinho header, which obviously kept the game at 0-0, and Spurs thankfully went on to win that game. So hopefully he doesn't have to be too busy in this one, but given the form Fulham are in, I do expect him to, have to bat away some shots and make some crucial saves. So hopefully he's not too busy, but he could be in for an important afternoon.
Yeah, I think so, and especially with the form that Ricardo Muniz is in as well. He just seems to be scoring every single week. So I do feel like at Craven Cottage he will be called upon a couple of times, maybe. I think even a bit more than he was at Villa Park, to be honest. But that's Vicario in goal. Right back is going to be Pedro Porro. You just saw it's night and day having him there ahead of Emerson Royale. He was so vital to us at Villa Park, and he's going to have another top game again this weekend.
Yeah, and Fulham have kind of been rotating their left wingers in recent weeks. Some weeks they've gone for Willian. More recently, they've gone for Alex Iwobi on the left wing. But I think when Porro looks to those challenges, he'll probably be thinking he can get the better of those kind of wingers who aren't blessed in this stage of their career with the dribbling ability or the pace they once did. Obviously, they're very good with close control and stuff like that. But I think Porro defensively will kind of back himself in one-on-one situations against those kind of wingers. They just got to be careful, because especially if they play Iwobi on the left, he's a player who does like to drift inside, play in those little pockets of space. So we just got to make sure we're tracking those runners, and everyone knows who's picking up who if Iwobi decides to play that kind of role.
Right centre back is obviously going to be Cuti Romero, the vice captain. He did put us under a bit of pressure in the first half against Aston Villa, but I felt like he definitely grew into the game and was so vital to us and had a really good game by the end of it. So he's going to be ever so important, as he always is.
Yeah, and given how Fulham play, I think his ability on the ball is going to be even more crucial in this game. Obviously, Muniz is a big physical threat, so we've got to make sure that if he's in the box, he's always being marked and stuff like that. But we know Fulham, I've seen them recently against the likes of Brighton, against Villa. They're definitely a team who like to sit back and exploit the opposition when in the transition. And for a team sitting back, we need a centre-back like Romero who's able to help us progress the ball up the pitch and unlock defences. And we know he's got the ability to do that. So I think he's got an important role to play in this one.
Left centre-back is Radu Dragusin. It's going to be a massive, massive chance for him in his first start for Tottenham Hotspur. Ange already confirmed in his press conference that he's most definitely starting, obviously, because Mickey van de Ven is injured, and what a chance it is for him.
Yeah, big opportunity. We saw what he did against Aston Villa. He had a brilliant kind of substitute appearance in that second half, and I was really impressed with how we really slotted in and looked really composed. And I hope that kind of appearance will help him settle down for his first start, and I think he's been waiting patiently for it. So I do think he's going to be ready for it. But obviously Muniz is in great form, and he's a big physical threat. So I think when it comes to crosses coming in the box and they're going to be aiming it towards Muniz, Dragusin's going to be the one aerially who's going to be the one who's probably more dominant in our centre-back partnership. So he's going to have a big job on his hands to containing Muniz from those kind of situations. And it's going to be a different kind of threat, but I'm sure he's going to be up to it.
And I was really impressed with the way he was able to play it out the back and how confident he looked on the ball as well. So I don't think anyone has any problems with Dragusin just slotting in there at the left centre-back. And you remember when Van de Ven got injured last time, everyone was just fearing the worst, whether it be Dyer, Davis, whoever it may be. But now we got Dragusin there. I think it fills us with a lot more confidence, let's just say that. In terms of the left back is obviously going to be Destiny Udogie, who had probably his best performance in a long time against Aston Villa. Not to say he's been bad prior to that, but against Aston Villa was probably the Destiny Udogie that, at his complete best, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was incredible, I thought, and he was really back to that Udogie that we've seen for many parts of the season, where he's just fearlessly running through the opposition and getting us and the team up the pitch with his incredible ball carrying ability. And in that kind of mood, he's really, really tough to contain. And as we saw against Aston Villa, it took John McGinn trying to basically break his knee to stop him, and even that couldn't stop him because he carried on. So really great performance against Fulham. Last few games they've been playing Harry Wilson left wing, but they've also been known to play Di Cordova-Reid. I imagine they might go for him just so they can try and stop that threat from Udogie, because I think if Harry Wilson plays that position and it's going to be Wilson against Udogie, I think Udogie will be licking his lips at that proposition.
If it is De Cordova-Reid against Udogie, you'd expect quite a number of fouls to happen on that side of the pitch, with them two having quite a battle. Both really aggressive players, aren't they? So it'll be an interesting battle up there, but I do expect Udogie to get the better of it by the end of the game. But that is the back four with Vicario in goal. We're going into the number 6. We're going to look at Yves Bissouma, who last couple of games has been, a lot better than maybe he has been, before the AFCON. And I like his defensive game, but I still want to see him be that driving force through that centre of the park.
Yeah, definitely. I think defensively, he's getting back to his best. On the ball, he's still playing it a lot safer than he did earlier in the parts of the season. But maybe that's part of the instruction from Ange, because arguably, did he make too many mistakes? I believe he's at his best when he is taking risks, but he definitely has been playing it a bit safer. Obviously, against Fulham, he's got the midfield three likely to be Reed, Paulinho, and Andreas Pereira. Obviously, Pereira, on his day, could be a very tricky customer in that number 10 position. Just got to make sure he's not having too much of an influence in the game. But I think the way we set up, I remember the game at Old Trafford. I thought Pereira was just getting all sorts of joy with that space in between midfield and defence. But I don't think he's going to get that same space here, especially because the way Basuma plays. So I think his main job is making sure Pereira doesn't grow an influence in this game.
And look, I think you got to give Basuma credit, because he was going through a massively bad time of it after those sendings off before the AFCON. And I think he's come back with a bit of a renewed sense of optimism and energy. And these last two games have been a massive step in the right direction for me. Alongside Basuma, we're going to look at Pape Matar Sarr, who's been absolutely brilliant since he's come back from the AFCON. I don't think he's put in a poor performance. I think every performance has been really good from him so far, especially at Villa Park. I thought he was brilliant. He is nursing that back injury. I'm not sure if Ange spoke about it in the press conference, but let's hope he's fully fit for this one.
He didn't speak about it, but obviously we did see him start last week at Villa Park, and he was absolutely brilliant. So maybe it's something he's getting over at this point, albeit he did go off after 70 minutes. I think Sarr's got such a crucial role to play in this game, especially how Fulham like to play. They're very aggressive in the centre, and especially with João Paulinho, who's been missing last few games and apparently is set to be fit for this one. I think he's got a very important role kind of distracting Paulinho, exploiting that space where either Paulinho vacates because he's concentrating on Maddison, or if Paulinho is concentrating on Sarr, leaving that space for Maddison to operate. So, and as well, we've seen what an important role he plays in creating space with his runs from deep runs from midfield. I think he's such an unsung hero, Pape Matar Sarr. I think recent weeks he's starting to get his flowers, and I think in this game, in terms of how the Fulham midfield operate, he's got a real crucial role.
Yeah, absolutely. And next to him to make up that midfield three is obviously going to be James Maddison, who's been growing and growing in this Spurs team since his return from injury. Again, I don't think he's put in a bad game since his return, but I just feel like he's getting better and better week on week as he's getting his physical stature back. And I thought against Aston Villa in that second half, he just controlled the game, dictated the tempo of the game, and we're going to need more of the same.
100%. And with João Paulinho likely back in the team for Fulham this weekend, obviously he's going to be up against one of the best defensive midfielders in the league when he's on his game. I think João Paulinho is brilliant. We've seen how much of an influence he can have, even when Fulham are playing against much better opposition. Then he can really be that difference maker to make sure they stay competitive. So I think Maddison's got a really crucial role, and whether that be distracting Paulinho, making sure that all the attention's on him and that leaves space for others, or kind of trying to exploit that space where João Paulinho isn't and trying to get away from players like Harrison Reed. I think Maddison's obviously the magic man for us. He's the key to unlock the door that Fulham have slammed shut, and he's going to be crucial in this game.
Yes, that's a midfield three of Basuma, Sarr and Maddison. So far, apart from Dragusin, the exact same team as we saw at Villa Park. On the right-hand side, we're going to look at Decky. I thought he was really frustrating, Decky, in the first half against Villa, but actually in the second half was probably his best performance of the season.
Yeah, I thought he really turned out to be an excellent display for him. Hopefully that's a sign of Decky really getting back to his best. He's going to be up against Anthony Robinson, who for me is one of the most underrated left backs in the Premier League. He's so strong, he's got broad shoulders, he's so quick as well, and he's going to have to make sure that when Anthony Robinson is running forward and causing a problem on that left-hand side, he provides the width for Fulham. Anthony Robinson. He gets forward a lot, and a lot of the time when Fulham are getting forward down that left-hand side, it's with a view of getting Robinson to the byline and getting balls into the box, and obviously Muniz trying to get on the end of it. Kulusevski is very good at tracking back. He's very good at doing his defensive job. So I think a large part of that is going to be making sure Robinson doesn't have influence, but also when we're going forward, he's going to have to get some joy getting dribbling past him and using his strength. And I think he's capable of it. I know Robinson's a good player, but I think Kulusevski will fancy getting a bit of joy out of Anthony Robinson.
On the left-hand side, we're going to look at Brennan Johnson. Brennan Johnson's obviously come under a lot of criticism this season since joining Spurs, but I feel like these last two games, you're really starting to see the confidence ooze through Brennan. You know, he came on against Crystal Palace, changed the game, and in that first half against Aston Villa, he was the one that looked like could have been the difference maker, got his goal in the second half, and it's just a much better performance levels that we're seeing from Brennan Johnson these last couple of games.
Definitely, and I think going to be up against probably Timothy Castagna on that right-hand side, and I think who's a defender who you could argue is similar level, similar kind of style to someone like a Matt Cash, from Aston Villa. And I think Johnson will be looking at that situation, think, I can physically get the better of him. I'm faster than him. I can get to the byline. I can get past him. And I think Castagna is one of those right backs who's like a decent level, but if he comes up against a player who's faster than him, he can kind of struggle occasionally. So Johnson's got to look to exploit that and just carry on the good form he's shown in the last few weeks, because he definitely seems to have leveled up and it seems to have got this extra sense of confidence and arrogance about him. So I think it's really important he carries that on against Fulham, and build on that momentum. Yeah,
and he knows the qualities that he has, Brennan, and I don't think he's been playing to that for his most time at Spurs. You know, too many times he's been getting the ball, tracking back and not taking on his man, but these last two games, he's just looked so confident. It seems like the confidence has been oozing out of him. Maybe those last-minute goals did it for him. Even when he wasn't performing well in those games, he came on, got those last-minute goals, and I think his stature in the team and his confidence has grown from that. And you saw straight from the first few minutes in that game at Aston Villa, he was looking to take on his man, and I want to see more of the same from him this weekend at Craven Cottage. But we all know who's going to go in the number 9, and that is Heung-min Son. Albeit Richarlison is fit, so there is a case to say Son maybe moves back out to the left and Richarlison goes up top. But I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Son has just been so good in that number 9. He has to stay there.
I think it would be a mistake to shuffle with the forward line, considering how fluid they looked, especially in that second half against Aston Villa. I think Son's numbers in the 9 speak for themselves. I don't think you can really take anyone out of that front 3 given their last performance. So I think Son has to play up front. And also, I believe Son did start in the 9 against Fulham back at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in October time when we won 2-0. He did end up with a goal and an assist. I think Adarabioyo wasn't playing that day, but I think Son's already got experience playing in the number 9 against his opposition and getting a lot of joy. So I think he has to start, and I think he's in fine form. Playing in that number 9 position now. It's now 14 appearances, 11 goals, and 4 assists. So he's really doing a great job in that position, and it's going to be crucial with having his clinical edge if we're going to take all 3 points in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's run through that lineup with you guys one more time. It's Big Vic in goal, Pedro Porro right back, Udogie left back, Romero and Dragusin as the centre back pairing, Bissouma, Pape Matar Sarr and James Maddison in the 3 in the middle, Kulusevski on the right, Brennan on the left with Heung-min Son up top. We both said 2-1 to Spurs in our Predict the Prem show. You sticking with it?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a tough game. We've seen Fulham recently starting to really play a lot better than they were at the beginning of the season, and they've been a much tougher opposition. Obviously, they beat Arsenal at Craven Cottage back in December, and more recently battered Brighton 3-0, 3-1. In their last home game.
Bournemouth 3-1, Brighton 3-0.
Yeah, it was 3-0, yeah. So they really took them to the sword in that game and played a really good counter-attacking game, because it was one of those games that Brighton had a lot of possession, but Fulham just ruthlessly countered them. So I think they're going to have a plan coming into this, but I just think the momentum we've got from that Villa game and the way we know we can play and the quality of the team, I think should take us through. I see it being a close game, but I think the quality should shine through, and I think we'll win 2-1.
Yeah, I kind of feel similar to you. I think we are going to miss something without the recovery pace of Mickey van de Ven when they do catch us out and maybe spring on us. But I do think Dragusin's got enough quality to cover the back line with Kuti, Romero. So I think it's going to be a really tight game at Craven Cottage. really tight. But I just feel like the clinical edge of Sonny and the quality that we do have up top is going to be the difference in this game. So I'm going to stick with 2-1 to Tottenham as well. But that is our predictions. That is our predicted lineup. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let us know in the live chat as well, what scoreline do you think it's going to be at Craven Cottage? 5:30 kickoff tomorrow night. But let's get into the match preview. We're going to talk about the form of these two teams coming into it first. Fulham, going into it in really good form, as are Spurs. Spurs' performance levels in the last stage of that Crystal Palace game was really good, and obviously in the second half against Aston Villa was probably our best 45 minutes of football this whole season. And when you're looking at our team coming together in terms of everyone fit, everyone available for that Aston Villa game, it was no surprise that you probably saw the best performance of the season, reminiscent of those first 10 games of the season. We don't have Mickey van der Ven for this game, but I don't think Look, it is a slight drop-off in quality bringing Dragusin in, but I don't think it's enough to say that it's going to affect the performance level, in my opinion. So you're looking at the form of these two teams. You're looking at Fulham at home at Craven Cottage. Before that loss against Villa a couple of weeks ago, they had the best home form outside of the top five out of everyone in the Premier League. So that goes to show what a great job Marco Silva is doing this season. But how are you looking at Fulham's form? Is it something to worry about?
I think it is something to worry about, just because they've upped their game, considering, the first part of the season, they were really struggling for form, struggling for goals. It looked like they might get dragged into a relegation battle, but they seem to have found solutions to those problems. They seem to have come out of that even better, and they've had a really strong second half of the season performance-wise. And I do think as well, you look at the teams when they're playing some of the better teams in the league more recently, they've been getting some really good results. As I mentioned, they beat Arsenal 2-1 at Craven Cottage back in December. They beat Brighton 3-0, obviously went away to Old Trafford and won 2-1 against Man United. They gave Aston Villa a really good game, even though they ended up losing 2-1. They could have easily gotten a point out of that game if their finishing was better on the day. So and also in the EFL Cup, they drew at home to Liverpool 1-1, showing that they can go toe to toe with them in that kind of game, that kind of environment. So I think they've shown that they can definitely give the better teams a game. And even though I look at their front line and I do think it lacks quality despite the form of some of their players, they've found other solutions to keep themselves competitive and keep themselves in the game. And whether that be it being a bit more pragmatic or making sure they're a bit more organised, a bit more compact than they were early in the season. And as well, I think the return of Tosin Adarabioyo has made a big difference to their back line. It's made them a lot more competitive, and I think that means we go into this game with a lot of a tougher job getting 3 points than it would have been maybe in December time, where maybe I think it would have been probably easier to go and get 3 points. So I think they've definitely shown that they're tough opposition now, and they're back to the levels they were probably last season, where they were finishing the top half and even battling for European places. They're getting close to that kind of level now. So it is a worry, but hopefully with the momentum we have after our last couple of games, it should be a worry for them as well facing us.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at Fulham at Craven Cottage, I think regardless of periods and times within the season, I think they've been really good at home all season. When you're looking at, they did start the season at home with a loss to Brentford, but since then, I remember when Man United went to Fulham, they won 1-0 in a really lucky game. Fulham probably should have got more out of that game, and they win very consistently at Craven Cottage, and they always give the top teams a very tough game there. Whether they get the result or not is a different story, but they always perform well, and they always make it very hard for the opposition to play their stuff. Having said that, you're looking at the head-to-head between these two clubs, and Tottenham clearly have the better of it between Spurs and Fulham. We did go to Craven Cottage earlier this season in the Carabao Cup. We lost on penalties with, it was a second-string Spurs team, and I think Fulham also rested a couple of players that day as well, but we found it very tough that day to play. I thought Spurs were dreadful, and that was credit to the way Fulham played.
Yeah, it was early on in Ange's tenure, obviously one of the very early on in the season, and it was one of those games where we didn't play our football anywhere near the level we know we can. It was a very frustrating game for everyone, albeit even in those circumstances, we still took it to penalties. We didn't get battered. Fulham probably deserved to get through at the end of the day, but it wasn't one of those games where it was a one-way traffic by any means. It was a very even game, and Fulham got the best of us on that day. But historically, as you can see, we do have a very good record against Fulham. It does always feel like a very difficult game when we go to Craven Cottage. It never feels comfortable. Yeah. We rarely go there and batter them by big margins, especially recently. I do remember a few occasions, back in the day. I remember that R2-D2 in the FA Cup. I remember that very clearly when Keane and Berbatov got 2 goals each. But rarely in recent times when we've gone there and absolutely battered them. It's usually a close game. If we do win, it's usually by the odd goal. So,
and that's been the case every single game in the league. We've won by 1 goal. Back until 2012 when we won 3-0. That's the last time we won by more than a goal margin.
So it's always a difficult place to go, Craven Cottage. And I think
in the league, that is.
Yeah, but it's always a difficult place to go. And I think a lot of big teams always find it difficult there. And I don't expect us to find it any different. They are a very aggressive team, but there's a reason. Not there's a reason why they're where they are, but I think we still have the quality to overcome those things. We just have to make sure that we're not getting bullied by the likes of Paulini and Reed, who like to put in big challenges. We have to make sure that we're not allowing their fullbacks to get the kind of width that they like to get. And as well, we have to make sure that we keep the big man Muniz quiet. And I think we can do those things. We have the quality to open them up. Or even though I'm looking at their defensive record at home, 15 goals conceded in 14 games. So they only average, about a goal a game conceded, which is pretty good for a club around mid-table. Quite a stern defence at home, but I do think if there's one team who has the quality to open up, we're one of those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we definitely got the quality, particularly with Heung-min Son. You look at the potential predicted lineup, you mentioned that it probably won't be Willian on the right and Iwobi on the left. I think it'll probably be one of those on the left and maybe, like you said, a Decordova Reed on the right. But I think I'm looking at that defence. You remember Calvin Bassey at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? We absolutely showed him up, didn't we, at the Tottenham Stadium?
We did, but there was a very specific reason for that.
Because he was on the right.
Because he was on the right. And he wasn't comfortable in that position, and we kind of forced him to use his weak foot. And actually, that's where we got both our goals, if I remember rightly. He gave the ball away a couple of occasions, and we exploited it ruthlessly. Now Tosin's next to him. We've seen a massive improvement in not only in Fulham's defence, but in Bassey himself. And obviously him and Tosin, 2 very physical defenders who are very strong, very good in the air. But I do think they're definitely vulnerable with the ball on the ground. I think quick movement in and around them. I do think they can struggle to keep up with that kind of play. I think they like it when you try and get in a physical battle with them. But Son's not going to do that. I think Son's going to ask different kind of questions of Tosin and Bassey, and hopefully he can ask enough difficult questions that he ends up getting the better of them. But in terms of that lineup, yeah, those 2. I think that Fulham's backline recently has been very, very good. Leno's been in good form. Obviously, the fullbacks are very good at getting forward and defensively decent. Also, those back 2 as well. That's where their big improvement has been. We're adding João Paulini into that, so I do think it's going to be hard to break them down. But in terms of containing Fulham going forward, if there's one game, I think that Mickey van de Ven, which I don't think will hurt us as much, missing Mickey van de Ven. I do think it'll be this kind of game, because if I look at Fulham's front line, none of them scare me when it comes to pace. I don't see many of them running in behind and getting a run on our defenders, even without Van de Ven. Van de Ven's obviously brilliant at getting those recovery runs, but a lot of the time he's chasing forwards who are very quick, very good at getting in behind. I look at that, especially if they play the likes of Wilson or Iwobi and Pereira. Like these, and Muniz, they're not the quickest. They're just not very fast players. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of forward line they do pick, because I do feel like if they go with Willian and Decordova Reed, that'll be better running in behind and more physical, but they're not as good technical players. So when they do have periods of possession, will they be able to keep it? But then if they do go with Iwobi and Harris and what's his name, Wilson, they'll be better in possession potentially, bit more technical ability, but any sort of speed and running in behind, and also ability to track back their wingers is going to be a bit diminished. So there's a bit of a decision for Marco Silva to make. In this game.
You know, having said that, they do have Adama Traore as well coming off the bench, who's obviously got blistering pace. And if they can look to get him in behind in the latter stages of the game, it could be a worry for us. But I do get what you're saying. I think Romero and Dragusin have it within them to really dominate in those areas of the pitch. But you look back to the cup game, Van de Ven was the best player on the park by miles. You know, he was so imperative to us that game, and without him we probably would have lost in normal time.
Yeah, but remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we played Davis, Van de Ven, I can't remember, I think maybe Dyer next, no, Dyer didn't, I think Emerson centre back, or no, Emerson at right back. We definitely played a very much changed back line. We had
it was a completely second.
Van de Ven was the only one who was I can't remember who played centre back next to Van de Ven that game. Maybe Sanchez. It might be down to Sanchez. Yeah. So we had Sanchez, Van de Ven, Davis, and Emerson. Of course, he's going to look like the best player in that kind of back line. You know what I mean? So obviously, he was crucial in that game. But I'm looking at, if we have our first choice back line and you just replace Van de Ven and Dragusin, I'm just looking purely on the kind of the need for having that recovery pace in Van de Ven. I just look at Fulham's front line, apart from obviously Traore. I don't know if he'll start or not. He hasn't been starting recently. But apart from him, I don't see too many players to be worried about when it comes to those runs in behind.
Yeah, I think if Silva is smart, though, which he is a smart manager, he does start Adama Traore when he looks at Mickey Van de Ven being out.
Potentially. He'll think about that.
That could be our Achilles heel on the day.
But then you got a doggy who maybe do, because we've seen in games where Van de Ven's been missing, a doggy's taken up that role, hasn't he, of covering spaces in behind, and he's going to have to do a bit of the heavy lifting there if Traore's starting on the right hand side.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Adama Traore has come off the bench in a couple of games recently and really changed the game. You know, the assist at Manchester United, I think he got, and then the goal. Who was it against? In the last stage of the Brighton game.
Yeah, he's done well off the bench. He has. And again, that's where you want Traore, against tired legs, where the game is still open. So the opposition have to come out. And that's when he can do damage. So we have to make sure that the game isn't very tight when by the time Traore comes on. That will be very, very crucial, because if we're drawing, or even worse, if we're losing by the time he's on, then every time they transition, they're just going to look for him, and he can carry the ball for fun. So that is definitely something to be worried about. But hopefully, if we're out of sight by the time he comes on, then he can have little impact. Yeah,
two players that I want to mention just before we get into the ones to watch. You have mentioned them already, but I just want to go over them again. Is Tosin Adarabioyo, who's obviously been linked to Spurs a lot over the last year or so. Obviously, I don't think we're going to go for him this summer now, because we've brought in Dragusin and we'll probably look for a left-sided defender more than a right-sided defender. But he's a player that's impressed me so much. I mean, he impressed me last season and I was really a big advocate of bringing him in. But since returning from that injury, he's been imperative to this Fulham side.
Yeah, and especially with all the noise surrounding his contract going on, to keep his level of performance and his concentration and not let that distract him shows quite a good mentality, I would say. And he's been, as you say, really important for Fulham since he's come back. And obviously there's a lot of talk about him moving last summer, and it would have been easy for that to kind of get into his head going into this season, especially that he didn't get his move in the summer, which he tried to push for. I think he tried initially for Monaco, if I remember rightly, but didn't quite pan out for him. And the fact that he hasn't let that affect his mentality, and he hasn't down tools or anything, and he's actually been superb since he's come back into the team, speaks volumes of his mentality. So I think a lot of teams will be looking at that and thinking, okay, this guy has the mentality to play for our team, and he has been brilliant, and he's been a big reason for Fulham's turnaround in form.
Yeah, and another one is João Palhinha, who's obviously got a massive, great head on his shoulders, because he nearly got that move to Bayern Munich. It collapsed on the last day of the transfer window because it didn't get done in time. And it's so easy for a player like that to, maybe not intentionally, but down tools, because, one second you're in Bayern Munich and the next second you're going back to Fulham. But again, he's just put in performance after performance after performance. And I feel like he's one of the best sixers in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think so. And I think he's bound to get a big move this summer, even though the one last summer failed to materialise for him. He is a reason why a lot of big teams are after him. He's an absolute monster when it comes to his defensive massive contributions. He's always near the top of the numbers for the numbers of tackles and interceptions. He almost like in a Kante kind of way, he can do the job of like two men just by him alone, with the amount of ground he covers and how aggressive he is. He's not one of those players who just does the running for the running's sake. He does the running for specific purposes, and he's very good at getting challenges in, and also crucially as well, making very tactical fouls and very tactical moments as well. But not only that, he can play. He's very good on the ball. He's very good technically. He's a very good passer. And when he gets in and around the penalty area, he can actually, make a bit of a difference. He's got a decent shot on him as well. So he's going to be a key for that midfield battle for Fulham if they're going to get any joy in this game.
Yeah, and he sometimes does like turn up and provide those clutch moments for Fulham as well. He's definitely one of those players. But let's move on to the ones to watch. We've picked out Ricardo Muniz and Willian. Muniz is a strange one. He was on loan from Fulham at Middlesbrough last year, scored 2 goals throughout the whole season, played for Fulham in the Championship the year before, scored about 5 goals. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he's come in for the injured Raul Jimenez, and he's just started to score goals for fun.
Yeah, and it's come at a time as well. They bought Broja in January, who looked like that's going to be their striker for the next 6 months. But he can't get in the team because Muniz is in such good form, and it's come out of nowhere, really. But he seems to be a very good penalty box striker in terms of his ability to use his physical assets to get around defenders, make runs to the back post, and now when he's getting on the end of things, he's actually finishing them. They're actually ending up at the back of the net, whether it be headers or nice finishes. I think pretty much every goal, though, what I would say is every goal is like. It's very similar to like how Richarlison's been getting his goals. They're all first-time finishes from crosses. Very much a penalty box striker. I haven't seen many goals where he's created for himself or, he's taken a ball down, shifted and got a shot off. A lot of it has just been from crosses. So he's definitely one of those strikers who needs the supply. He can't make things by himself. But if we allow him the supply, he's clearly one of those strikers who can take advantage of it. And he's in a rich vein of form. That's definitely something to pick out for. I do look at his goals and I feel like it is more probably a purple patch and something that's sustainable, to be honest, the way he's getting his goals, but he's in the middle of that purple patch now, so there's no discounting that he can make a big difference if we allow Fulham to get the supply to him.
Yeah, and the other player is Willian, and I've been so impressed with Willian since he's joined Fulham in general, because it's so easy to say that when he left Arsenal, he was terrible at Arsenal, and you're thinking, all right, this guy's done in the Premier League. He went back to Brazil, come back, and he seemed like maybe not back to his best, back to his usual Chelsea self, but better than anyone thought he could be.
Yeah, and another player nearly left in the summer, and everyone thought he was going to leave, even though he had a good season last season, and he's kind of carried on that form this season as well, even though he's mid-30s now. He's still such an effective weapon for Fulham, especially with his dribbling ability. Obviously, his final product's always been a bit hit and miss, but he's got such quick feet. Even now, he's still such a good dribbler, and most crucially, he does love playing against Tottenham. That's also a thing throughout his career. He's always seemed to have good games against Spurs, and we always seem to struggle with him. So I think if he's going to start, someone like Pedro Porro is going to have to make sure he's not having too much of an influence, and he can be one of those players where they just in the transition, if they find him, he can really just get them with his own ability into good situations. They don't always take advantage of them, but he's very good at getting them there. So he's another player who, with his quality, on his day, he can just turn up and give us a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's so true. But you're looking at this game, and on the back of that 4-0 win against Aston Villa, on the back of that win against Crystal Palace as well, it's so important. I can't stress how important this game actually is. Like, you would think Fulham away after 2 big wins, it's just a routine game, but it's anything but that this weekend. Fulham are a really strong side at home, and if we win this game, I think it just sets us up so nicely for these 3 games that we've got coming up. Out of the next 4 games, you're looking at this game and the West Ham game, probably our 2 hardest games over the coming run. And I really feel like if we can put a really good run together now, these next 4 games, then top 4, look, people are saying top 4 is ours for us to lose now, but especially if we can go on this run now.
These are the kind of games that you slip up on, you know, obviously, especially after you have big wins against the likes of Aston Villa, where everyone knows it's a big game, everyone's going to be up for it. The eyes of the Premier League are on that kind of game, and so everyone is knowing to be hyper aware and hyper vigilant in that kind of game, and it's easy to get yourself up for these kind of games. Then the real show of quality and consistency is then following that up the next week and making sure that you're not getting too ahead of yourself and making sure that you're not taking this game for granted and realizing that every game brings with it a different set of challenges, and that just because we ended up beating Villa 4-0 doesn't mean we're going to go into this game and this is because Fulham are down the table, it's going to be easier. That, you know, Fulham are going to come into this game very confident with their home form, with a different kind of game plan than Aston Villa had as well. You know, Villa had the extra game in this week. Fulham are going to be able to play with fresher legs as well. So I do anticipate, in a weird way, it could even be a more difficult game than the Villa game on the day. So I really hope the players don't go into this game, take it for granted, thinking just because we're going away in Fulham and just because we beat Villa 4-0, we can go in and just turn up and win. And I think that's the kind of mentality we have to guard against. And I think that I remember Ange saying, I can't remember what game it was. I can't remember off the top of my head what game it was. There was one game we had a big win, and then the next week we turned up and had a really poor performance and lost. And I think Anne said after that game, I think maybe the players thought they can just turn up and win today, and obviously it didn't pan out that way. And I hope that we've learned the lesson from that game, and we take this even just as seriously as we took that Villa game. We're just as motivated. We have put just as much energy into this game. If we do that, if we match Fulham's energy, or even more than that, if we can be even more energetic and aggressive than Fulham, then there's no reason we can't dominate this game, create chances and score lots of goals. But if we go into this game thinking, we beat Villa, we're now on a roll and we're going to go and cruise top four, that's where the problems come, and that's where you start to slip up.
Was it the Everton away game that he said that?
Potentially, I just can't
because it was on the back of that 3-2 win at Brentford, and we killed them off in the first 10 minutes of the second half in a fairly good display, and then we weren't that great at Goodison Park.
It might have been. I can't remember, to be honest. I just remember him saying that quote.
I remember it as well. But look, like I said before, I can't stress enough what a big game this is. And if we do slip up in this game, then would you say, and Aston Villa do go on and win this weekend, which isn't beyond all realms of possibility, does the momentum swing again?
Well, especially given the fact that we're going to an international break now. Obviously, you don't want to be mulling over a bad result for 2 weeks, and that's the kind of what you're risking by doing that. Obviously, a lot of it depends on how you lose, how you drop points. I've always said that, and I think that's very, very important, because if we have a performance, for example, like we had at home to Villa, where we dominate, we have loads of chances, but we just don't put them to bed and we end up unluckily losing points, then sometimes, look, that happens in football, you got to take that on the chin. But if we go into this game and have a performance like, for example, like we did against Wolves, or like we did it away at Craven Cottage last time, where it's just very disjointed, we're kind of not creating the chances, we're not playing our football, and we make it too easy for the opposition to contain us, then all of a sudden you got to start asking, then all of a sudden that brings up zone problems, you start getting criticism, then all of a sudden the Villa might be able to take encouragement from that. So it's about how you lose the game, or what happens in the context of the game. But for sure, if we drop points and then Villa win, the momentum they'll start to believe again. Right now, I know they had a big win on Thursday, but the belief of them getting top four we're going to start to chip away at that, even though they're still in the fourth position now. If we win this game, the pressure's right on them to beat West Ham, because even a draw in that game, if we beat Fulham, isn't going to be good enough to get back in the top four. So the pressure's really on them to go there and win, and they'll have tired legs. They'll be facing a West Ham side who, have really good players in the front line, and all of a sudden they might start to feel that pressure, and that's what we've got to make sure we're putting on them, is that pressure to win.
Yeah, a lot of accounts were saying last night, Dale Johnson, one of them, saying that it looks like England are going to get that fifth spot now, and it will take. It looks very much likely. But now with Leverkusen playing West Ham and Bayern Munich playing Arsenal in Europe, is that still the case?
No, it's not the case. If Leverkusen knock out West Ham, and if who's the other one? If Bayern
Arsenal.
If Bayern knock out Arsenal, then it all swings back into the Germans' favour. So it's completely not the case anymore. But we just got to make sure we get top 4. Don't worry about top 5. That'll sort itself out. But if we keep playing the way, we just got to concentrate on ourselves. I don't think there's any point concentrating on the coefficients, because we just got to make sure that we build on the momentum, we get that top 4. If we don't get top 4, it's going to be our own doing. And if we don't get Champions League, it's got nothing to do with because of the coefficients, because we didn't do our job properly. And that's how we got to view it.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And I would say that when you're looking at the performances that we've had in the last couple of games, particularly from a defensive standpoint, it's been so much better than what it has been recently. It's been no surprise as well that since we've got our team back, we've looked more fluid going forward. So I really think there's no excuses whatsoever not to put in a really top display this weekend.
Yeah, and I think the key, looking at how Fulham play, depends, because they've been chopping and changing a bit. They haven't really had a proper consistent 11 for the last few weeks. They've changed quite a lot of their players, but
he's like the Tinker Man, Marco.
He is, yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what kind of setup they have, because usually, recently they've been playing Iwobi and Wilson on the wings, and they've been kind of very tucked in, kind of more like 2 number 10s and 2 wingers, and their width gets provided by Castagna and Robinson from fullback getting forward. One of the players in the front line kind of dropped back, making a midfield 3, and then Wilson and Iwobi kind of tuck in, make 2 number 10s with the fullbacks providing width. So we just got to make sure that if they do get periods of possession, Johnson and Kulusevski have to tuck in and make sure that just have to make sure that a Porro and a Doggy are not getting occupied by Robinson and Castagna, and they can kind of focus on Wilson and Iwobi getting tucked in, and that's going to be really, really crucial in this game to making sure that we don't get overloads in those kind of areas. But if we're dominating possession, that'll be really crucial, because if we can pin Castagna and Robinson back and making sure if Dogi and Porro are really pinning back their fullbacks and not allowing them to get forward, and making sure Johnson and Kulusevski are constantly options, that's going to really help suffocate them, because I believe if we make sure that they're penned in our half, they don't really have the pace if they play that kind of forward line to get those balls over the top, get those passes over the top. Even without a Van de Ven, I do think Romero and Dragusin can cope with the kind of forward line that they have in the transition. But if they play De Cordova-Reid and Willian, then it's a slightly different threat.
Or Adama.
Or Adama. It's a bit of although Adama, it's a bit of an interesting one. Adama's a threat with space, but he doesn't like to run in behind. He likes the ball to feet. So he doesn't make those, a lot of the time he doesn't make those runs off the ball. But the thing is with him, if he picks up the ball from on the halfway line with loads of space to run into, he can destroy you. And that's obviously something.
He seems to destroy us every time he plays us.
Yeah,
he always has a good game against us, Traore.
Yeah. But a lot of the time he has a good game without doing anything. You know what I mean? Like he looks threatening and ends up not really doing
Doesn't he score against us fairly regularly?
I remember he scored one big goal for Wolves against us, like from outside the box, and he battered it. But I don't remember too many other goals he scored against
Maybe
us.
assists or something. But I do remember him always playing well against us, and he's always a massive threat whenever he comes up against us.
I remember under Nuno, he was playing for Wolves, and we beat them 1-0. It was we totally didn't deserve to win, and he completely destroyed us on the wing. But he never ended up actually getting an assist. He just kept beating our fullback for fun and then not getting the pass off essentially. So he's that kind of player. He can frustrate you a lot, but he wows you with his amazing dribbling ability. I do wonder whether they'll play him, because I think it would be a smart move because of how much risk we give. The problem with playing him is you have to find the ball to feet, and if we're very compact and we're smothering Fulham, are we going to be able to prevent that? That direct ball to Traore? But if they do pull it off on a couple of occasions and he's got space to run into, then all of a sudden we're in big trouble. But it's all about getting the ball to him, and will they be able to do that with how he likes to get the ball to feet instead of running in behind? If they play De Cordova-Reid, he does like to run in behind a bit more, so he's a bit more of a different kind of threat. He does like to stretch the opposition, but then he does kind of lack a bit of quality when it gets to the final third, and his finishing ability, that kind of stuff. He does lack quality. So I think a lot of it will be decided on tactics from Marco Silva, who he decides to deploy on the wings and things like that. But it's going to be an interesting tactical battle from that kind of front. But I just hope we play with the ability of controlling the game, suffocating Fulham, and making sure that they're forced into going long, because I don't believe they have the quality in the front line to really trouble us on too many occasions if we get them in that kind of scenario.
I'm just looking at the how good Fulham have been from set pieces this season, because that's a clear area where, you know, we haven't been that strong this season in terms of defending set pieces. And I'm looking at the players that they have, the two centre backs, physical players, quite big.
Palhinha.
You're looking at Palhinha as well. You're looking at Muniz as well. And you're looking at the players that can deliver those set pieces in Willian, who's obviously got a very good crosser in Pereira as well.
Good delivery.
100%. So I'm looking at their set piece stats, and it's not actually that strong. They've scored 7 set pieces this season, which is 12th in the league. Their set piece XG, they're near the bottom, actually near to us. We're on 7.28, they're on 8.002. But even regardless of those stats, that's an area where they can clearly target us, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think in recent weeks we've been a lot better from set pieces, considering the struggles we had in January time where it seemed like every week we were conceding a set piece. So hopefully that's something Spurs have worked on, and it seems that something we've got more of a handle on. But for sure, that's one of the because I remember against Man United, they gave Man United a lot of trouble from set pieces at Old Trafford. I think they scored from one, and I think they had a few cleared off the line that day. They were giving them a lot of trouble. I think Onana had to make a number of saves from set pieces on that day. I was watching that game. So clearly that's something. They know that they're not going to have a lot of the ball in this game, and they know that when they get those chances from set pieces, those are going to be a big moment to try and get an advantage on us. So for sure, set pieces is going to be crucial. If we stop them from set pieces, that's just another avenue taken away from them to hurt us, for sure.
Yeah, I would say, like, look, regardless of the strengths that Fulham have, we are going into this massive favourites going into this game. We have the clear quality over this Fulham side. So I believe that if we do play our football and play with the same energy, the same application that we did in that second half against Aston Villa, we come away with the 3 points. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination it's going to be an easy game, but if we go in with that mentality and we go in playing the football that we know we can play, we've got to be taking away 3 points from this game.
Yeah, and I think it'll be massive. I think it's really important that we show consistency going into this game. We don't let anything distract us from getting 3 points in this game. We don't let the previous good performances distract us. We don't let any other outside influence. We've got to make sure we're completely focused. I'm sure Ange is going to be drumming that into them going to this game, that it's all well and good beating Villa 4-0, but if you then drop points the next week, doesn't mean as much. So I think that will be the message going to this game. And I think if the players take that on board, I've got no doubt we have the quality to win this game. And we've got the squad. You know, if things aren't going well in the game, if players are having off days, now we do have players to change it. We've got Werner to come on, Lo Celso can come on, Bentancur can come on, Richarlison can come on if we need a plan B. So this is all to our benefit, and we've got to make sure we're taking full advantage of that. But I do think the first 11 play to the level that we saw in that second half against Villa. Hopefully we won't need the bench, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Timo, isn't it? Because he's probably put in his best 2 displays in a Spurs shirt the last couple of games. I thought he was brilliant against Crystal Palace, came on and scored against Aston Villa, and we're still not putting him in the predicted lineup. That's just a credit to how well Johnson's doing as well.
And I think Johnson deserves the credit. Maybe, I wonder how much of it from Ange's point. I know Ange is always going to put a lineup that he believes is best fit to win the game, but I do wonder if any part of Ange is thinking Johnson is my long-term player who's young, who's obviously finding his way in the team, and now he's in good form. I'd rather play him because I know he's going to be here next season rather than Werner, who we'll still have to make a decision on. I don't know. I might be over theorising, but I do wonder if both players are in good form, does he side with Johnson just because it's better for his long-term development rather than go with Werner, who we're not sure yet if he's going to be here long-term, and if it's a choice between those two, that's why he would rather side with Johnson than Werner.
I don't know if that's the case. I just think it's the case that Brendan actually has been better than Timo in these last couple of games. They've both been really good, but you're looking at Timo against Crystal Palace and against Johnson against Aston Villa. I think Johnson probably shades it on that one in terms of performance level. And you're looking at the 2 sub appearances as well. Johnson came on and changed the game against Crystal Palace. Timo, he came on, did well, but he didn't exactly change the game, did he?
He
didn't need to, exactly. So I think that Brennan is actually playing better than Timo at the moment.
Yeah, that's also, you could definitely make that argument as well. I'm not saying definitely. I mean, it's very tight either way. I think both players are playing very well at the moment. But I think it's a testament to Brennan that Werner's playing that well and he's still keeping out the team. And look, you got to give Brennan respect, as we've said. Last 6 games, it's 5 goal contributions. I think it's 8 in his last 10 games as well. 10 goal contributions in the Premier League this season. So he is starting to make an impact in that front line. And I think it's important to capitalise, especially for a young player like Brennan, when he's in this kind of momentum. You want to keep giving him the confidence and let that confidence flow through him. Whereas Werner, a bit more of an experienced player, we know he's a confidence player, but he'll be a lot more experienced in dealing with that situation. Whereas I think with Brennan, when he's in a purple patch, you just got to keep playing him and make sure he takes full advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that is it for our match preview. We've both got the 2-1 to Spurs on the night at Craven Cottage. Sim will be here with Barnaby for the live watch along. So come and join them for a play-by-play action and a bit of fun as well. But thank you everyone for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.